Welcome to She Became CEO, the podcast for women transforming body, mindset, relationships, and money. I'm your host, Ilse B., and here we speak boldly, heal deeply, and lead lives we're proud of. This is about becoming the CEO of your voice, your business, and your life on your terms. Let's begin. This week, I attended a few online meetings where women shared deeply personal, often painful stories. Many spoke of their struggles, but only few dared to speak of their hopes or dreams, and when they did, it was usually with a tone of resignation. It was the kind of language that says, "It would be wonderful if life could be like that, but it can't be because of this or that." The underlying belief seemed clear. The things they long for, comfort, freedom, joy, are meant for others, not for them. If that's where you are right now, it's completely understandable. We all get stuck sometimes. I was stuck for a long time too. I was married to a man who was slowly destroying himself with alcohol. I understood that he was trying to numb his trauma, and I felt compassion for him, so I stayed and tried to help. In the process, I learned a lot, and eventually I began coaching others. But back then, I believed I had to sacrifice my own happiness in order to be of service. I didn't think I could have both, to help others and be happy myself. What changed that belief was a coaching session with Christina Berkeley. I told her about my husband's health and how I felt it was my duty to stay with him because I had given vows. She said she understood, but then she asked me one simple question. What is it that you want for yourself, regardless of your circumstances? That question stopped me in my tracks. It made me realize I had allowed those circumstances to define me. And for the first time in a long while, I began to see myself separately from them. There are many reasons why women stay stuck in self-sacrificing roles. In this episode, I want to address the elephant in the room, money. For many women, money becomes the reason or the justification for putting themselves last. And while financial conversations are becoming more common these days, they still don't go far enough, or there are not enough of them. Money remains a sensitive subject. As Coach Christina Berkeley once told me, people will often talk more openly about their sex lives than about their finances. And as a coach, I also noticed that. I have noticed this in the language women use in their daily lives. They talk about service, purpose, and contribution, but not about money. And what doesn't get named stays vague. It doesn't materialize. It's even in the Bible. In the beginning was the Word. If we don't speak about money clearly and confidently, we leave it in the shadows. And that's where shame festers. Because of cultural conditioning, many women feel shame even in admitting, sometimes just to themselves, that they want to have a lot of money. Shame is a powerful tool that has long been used to control women's desires. If we openly say we want a partner who can financially support us and our children while we do what we are naturally wired to do, nurture, raise, care, we risk being labeled as gold diggers. But the truth is, this desire often comes from a deeply rooted maternal instinct. We want safety and stability so that our children can grow up secure. That instinct isn't something to be ashamed of. It's wise and valid. Of course, all of this is distorted nowadays, especially in the United States, where young mothers often return to work shortly after childbirth, leaving their babies with sitters. This may not seem like a big deal from a logistical standpoint, but in a child's perception, time equals love. When a parent consistently devotes more time to work than to the child may conclude that the parent loves the job more. Thanks God, there are still mothers who prioritize their children's emotional well-being, unfortunately, often at the expense of their own happiness. Many women stay in difficult or toxic relationships for the sake of their kids. As I'm building my new low-paced trauma-aware program to help women become CEOs of their voices, their money, and their lives, I'm actively seeking opportunities to listen, to meet women, to hear their stories. At one of the meetings I attended this week, a woman shared that she hasn't spoken to her husband in 3 years, even though they still live in the same house. She explained that the rift began because her mother-in-law interfered in their relationship, and her husband allowed it. It struck me that both his deference to his mother and her quiet endurance of the situation might be shaped by their shared cultural background. I believe they are from an Indian culture where family hierarchies and parental involvement in marriage can be more prominent than what Americans of European descent might be used to. On the other hand, I know a white American couple raising the wife's daughter who continued to share a bed despite not having had intimacy in years. There's a different dynamic at play there, but a similar theme: staying together, even in emotional disconnection, often because of practical reasons and long-standing beliefs about duty, stability, or appearances. One of the biggest reasons that a woman may be tolerating such a situation, whether she realizes it or not, is what I would call money wounds. These aren't just about current bank balances. They stem from deeper fears and beliefs, often inherited or shaped by personal history. For centuries, women were treated more like property than people, chosen, given away by their fathers, and moved into the man's household where they were expected to follow his rules. You still see this symbolism in many wedding ceremonies today. In a more personal level, money wounds may come from growing up in a household where financial stress was constant, hearing your parents worry about bills or fearing the family might lose their home. That kind of insecurity sinks in early and silently shapes how safe or unsafe it feels to make bold choices later in life. That's why I'm creating a program specifically for mature women who either have no children or whose children are already out of the house. I know how much they've already carried. The social system in the US isn't as supportive of women and families as it is in Latvia and many European countries, and it wouldn't feel right urging mothers of young children to take on even more. What I have observed and lived is the reality of the regular woman's life, with all its weight and quiet sacrifice. My intention is to offer her something else, a path toward a brighter future, rooted in clarity, possibility, and stronger business foundations. Business can be both challenging and deeply rewarding, especially for women who care about relationships, which most do. In fact, it often activates our maternal instincts because a business, much like a child, demands attention and care. My sister once told me something that stuck with me. A business is jealous. If you neglect it, it will act up. That's partly why in this phase of my life I've chosen to speak to women who aren't currently focused on romantic relationships. Their energy can be redirected toward building something of their own. If you haven't listened to my previous episode, I'll give you a quick overview of the 3 women I often refer to, my listener avatars. Of course, you'll get a fuller picture if you go back to episode 22, but here's a short recap. So first, let me introduce you to Ellen. She's in her early 60s, juggling a demanding job as a corporate analyst while caring for her mother who has dementia. Ellen stepped down from a leadership role to reduce stress, and although she dreams of starting an online business, Fear of self-promotion and sheer exhaustion are holding her back. She is strong and independent, but quietly overwhelmed. Then there is Marta, a vibrant first-generation immigrant from southern Mexico. She gave up her career and community to move to the US and be close to her grandchildren. Now dependent on her daughter's household, Marta is learning English and dreams of sharing her cultural stories online, maybe even turning them into something beautiful and lasting. Finally, we have Nicole, aged 52, newly divorced and navigating a sea of emotional recovery, grief, menopause, and years of psychological strain. She works as a waitress, but is also a gifted pottery artist with a dream to host creative, soul-nourishing classes in her spacious home studio. But brain fog, financial stress, and lingering doubt cloud her path forward. As you may have noticed, all three women are quietly dreaming about creating their own business or product. At the heart of those dreams is a longing for financial freedom and abundance. But they often don't say it out loud because they are not struggling to survive. They feel shamed for simply wanting more. They also carry doubts about whether success is even possible at this stage of life. Compared to younger entrepreneurs, they wonder, would starting now be a waste of time and money? Could they really build something meaningful from here? It's easier sometimes to come up with reasons not to try than to admit they still want more. Building wealth in midlife and beyond might seem like a tough task, but it's absolutely possible. One of the reasons it feels out of reach is because most financial advice is aimed at young people. Start investing early. Set aside a percentage of your paycheck and let compound interest do its magic over decades. That narrative can feel discouraging if you're getting a later start. Influencers like Stephen Bartlett and Louis Howes often talk about how they built their wealth, which can make it feel like we are too late to the game. But that's only if we don't shift our perspective. What they have achieved in the past decade or so is still possible for many of us if we start now. Stephen Bartlett co-founded his first company at the age of 21 and is now 32. Louis Howes is 42 now. He built his podcast, The School of Greatness, over a similar stretch of time. I once read that during his early days, Louis was sleeping on friends' couches to save money, and it's only recently that he bought his first home. So even if you're starting at 62, there's no reason you couldn't build something meaningful by 67. It takes consistency, the decision to stop making excuses, and the willingness to prioritize your health so you can have energy to create. You don't have to do things perfectly, you just have to do them. So I'm speaking to encourage everyone to take ownership of their financial situation, no matter where you are now and what your gender is. But I speak specifically to middle-aged women because I understand the added layers of struggle they face. And I want to reassure them that creating change is still absolutely possible. You can pivot. You can take action. You are not too late. When it comes to building wealth, one of the most practical and encouraging videos I've come across recently is a conversation between Chris Harder and Jamie Villalobos on YouTube. What I appreciate about it is that they specifically address people aged 50 and beyond, those who feel like they're starting from financial zero with no assets and rising anxiety about retirement. Chris and Jamie offered grounded advice and a calm perspective that reassures it is not too late to change your financial story. They explained that despite what sensationalist headlines might suggest, it is entirely possible to turn things around financially after 50, but the first step is often an emotional one. The conversation around money tends to carry hidden baggage, shame, regret, fear, or simply confusion, And these feelings deserve acknowledgement. Facing them honestly can be the first true act of financial empowerment. It's also important to stop comparing yourself to younger people. Your timeline is different. Your journey is valid, and it's not too late to begin again. They go on to discuss how to create a realistic plan based on what's actually achievable. Their advice is still framed around a typical American listener in average health who aims to retire at 65. In that context, they reference a commonly cited retirement benchmark, accumulating about $1 million. That amount could sustainably generate around $40,000 per year. Modest, but enough to provide a sense of comfort and independence, especially if combined with additional income sources. They then introduce a female avatar named Sally, who has been a stay-at-home mom for decades. Their advice to someone like Sally starting from limited or no resources at the age of 50 or beyond is to adopt a humble and realistic mindset. That might include returning to entry-level or mid-level employment, even after many years out of the workforce. They suggest that a median income job around $50,000 per year is attainable for most people willing to re-enter employment. This kind of job can serve as financial foundation from which to build the future. Sally's situation differs from those of my avatars, Ellen, Marta, and Nicole. Sally simply wants financial security and a comfortable retirement at 65, whereas my three women are dreaming of building something of their own. They aren't looking to re-enter the traditional job market. That's why it's so important to define who our primary audience is when offering support or advice. The needs and desires of a woman seeking stability through employment are different from those of a woman seeking meaning and freedom through entrepreneurship. The next part of the video interview between Chris Harder and Jamie Villalobos speaks more directly to women like Ellen, Marta, and Nicole. It highlights how relying solely on a job, especially in midlife, often isn't enough to build financial security or freedom. That's where creative income generation, or what many now call a side hustle, comes in. While some of the side hustle hype online feels exaggerated or gimmicky, there are absolutely grounded practical ways to create income streams. I'm creating a trauma-aware, heart-centered program for women like them, one that meets you where you are and shows you that building something new can actually be energizing and even fun, especially when you are not pressured to get everything right on the first try. With the right guidance, curiosity can take the lead, and the learning process itself becomes part of your transformation. I also agree with experts that a crucial step in changing your financial trajectory is gaining clarity around your expenses. If your goal is to eventually live on a fixed income, whether that's through retirement savings or business-generated revenue, you need a clear picture of what your lifestyle truly costs. That includes looking at both conscious spending and unconscious habits, what you spend intentionally and what just slips through. Sometimes significant change doesn't come from earning more, but from spending more wisely and with greater awareness. And when you are building a business, that clarity can make all the difference in how you price your offers, budget your income, and plan for growth. At the same time, I deeply resonate with the perspective shared by entrepreneur and author Shamina Taylor. Through her work, she emphasizes the importance of releasing the scarcity mindset. She talks about how her life started to shift once she stopped gripping so tightly to every penny, saving crusts of gluten-free bread or squeezing every last drop from a toothpaste tube. That might sound small, but it came from a place of fear. When she replaced that fear with a steady belief that there would always be more money, more opportunity, more support, everything began to change. She no longer operated from lack, she began operating from trust. Looking back, I can say that my life also shifted when I made a conscious decision to act from a place of strong certainty. What Kabbalah teacher David Guillaume calls certainty beyond belief. It wasn't about being blindly optimistic. It was about choosing to believe in a future I couldn't see yet but was willing to work toward. That mindset change didn't solve everything overnight, but it gave me the strength to take aligned action and keep going, even when I didn't have all the answers. This idea that mindset and alignment are foundational to building wealth later in life is also echoed by Chris Harder and Jamie Villalobos. They emphasize that with clarity, humility, and a willingness to learn, doors began to open where walls once stood. Developing financial literacy, taking practical steps to manage expenses, and creating intentional income streams can lead to profound transformation, even if you're starting at midlife. This aligns beautifully with what Shemina Taylor expresses in her book, Unlocking the Quantum Woman, which I'd like to end with today. Her words are powerful reminders that change begins with our internal shift, from lack and survival to belief and expansion. Here are a few quotes that deeply resonated with me. Alignment is a feeling when a desire is backed by a belief that you can have it and an openness to receiving it. And that belief is backed by the emotion that it's happening already. It's a place free of resistance and blocks. It means that your body, beliefs, and behaviors all match the vibration of the life you desire. Everything flows effortlessly. When you are in alignment, you usually have a deep belief that things are going to work out, that money is going to show up, that you will attract love, and that everything will unfold for your highest good. And it does. Alignment is keeping the commitment you made to your little girl self, that she can have whatever she wants, just because she wants it. It's holding the faith even when you cannot yet see what you desire coming into your life. These words invite us to step out of passive endurance and into conscious creation. If Ellen believes her experience matters and allows herself to imagine being paid for her insights, she might start consulting and eventually build a business model that runs without her needing to do all the work herself. If Marta believes her culture and voice are valuable, she can begin turning her stories into books, digital keepsakes, or community initiatives. If Nicole trusts that her gift with clay and her vision for beauty matter, she can turn her basement studio into a space of healing and learning, both in person and online. None of this has to be rushed. None of this needs to be perfect, but it does need to begin. And not from a place of fear or pressure, but from alignment, clarity, and willingness to say, my life, my joy, and my financial future matter. I can do this. If something in this episode resonated with you, if you see yourself in Ellen, Marta, or Nicole, and you are quietly dreaming of building something of your own, I'd love to hear from you. I'm looking for women who are ready to explore what's next with curiosity, care, and a spark of courage. If you have a story, an idea, or a message you feel called to share, email me. Whether it's for a future podcast conversation or to explore how we might work together, this could be the beginning of something real and meaningful. You don't need a polished pitch. just a sincere note about where you are and what's on your heart. Let's see what unfolds. Thanks for listening to She Became CEO. If this episode sparked something in you, share it with a woman who is ready to reclaim her voice, her business, or her life. You can subscribe, leave a review, or explore more at shebecameceo.com. And remember, the transformation starts with you. Until the next time, lead boldly and speak your truth.